That's the new Subaru Crosstrek. My name's Cameron, I'm standing on some dirt and I want to show you why this little off-roader is one of my favorite small SUVs you can buy if you actually intend on taking this off the pavement. Now if you don't necessarily have to buy this SUV here, but if you do want to go to places like the snow or light sections of dirt like this, then this is one of the best small SUVs you can buy, and I'm here to show you why that is. Now this model here is the hybrid Subaru Crosstrek, so it's the most expensive Subaru Crosstrek you can buy, but I don't think this is the best model you can choose out of the new Crosstrek lineup. So let's quickly take a walk around to see what's changed for 2023. So first of all, the price. It starts off at a very reasonable $39,000 drive away, but then it will go over $50,000 if you want to buy this model here, which is the top of the range hybrid Crosstrek. Now what do you get? Well, you get LED lights which corner when you turn the steering wheel, which are fantastic. You get standard headlight washers across every single model, which is really quite nice. I do like the new hood design. It looks quite aggressive compared to the previous generation. I also do like the new grille. It's more open and I really like the design. It just looks far more modern, more sleek. And you've also got plenty of plastic cladding, which also has a nice texture to it as well, so it looks a bit more interesting, and it goes very much in line with the new WRX. Now in true Subaru fashion, there's no radar pads here or anything hidden behind this badge here. There is a camera up here, but all your safety systems are way up here in the windshield. You can count 1, 2, 3 cameras up here, which are all designed to read the road ahead of you and keep you on the road and prevent you from rear-ending someone and making sure this car is nice and safe, which is what Subaru calls the eyesight camera system, because it does look like a pair of eyes looking out from the windshield. Now down below, we are getting 220 millimeters of ground clearance, which is one of the major points why this is a great small little off-roader, is that you actually get a proper amount of ground clearance, so you won't be scraping any awkward bumpers when you go a little bit more off-road than some small SUVs might like to go. And also underneath here, you are getting an engine guard, but it's made of plastic, so it's only going to do some light protection. It's not going to protect against any major rocks or any sort of sliding that might happen when you go a bit more aggressively off-road, but at least there's a bit more protection than a standard SUV. Now you also get these fog lights down here, which look very off-roady because they're sort of integrated here into the front bumper quite nicely. Down here, you also get more plastic cladding with a little bit of a vent here on the side to help with airflow, which is a bit interesting for a small SUV like this. We get 18-inch wheels, which look quite good on this car here, but I do prefer the wheels that you get on the base Crosstrek compared to these. Now talking color, this is probably the best color you can get in this new Crosstrek. I really love the color of this thing, and also the new Crosstrek Wilderness Edition comes in a similar color to this, and I really think blue is the new Crosstrek's color, which just looks spot on and really quite nice. Now because this is the hybrid, we get a little boxer badge here on the side, just like you'd find on a BRZ and an 86, but instead here, this boxer badge says E-Boxer, and it uses blue badges here to let you know that this is a hybrid. But I really like how it sort of has the pistons on either side to let you know this is using a boxer motor. Now we also get gloss black mirror caps, which look a little bit more premium here. We do have keyless entry and locking, which is quite nice as well, and it's all touch sensitive, it's no buttons. Now we also get these roof rails, which are standard across the range and nicely integrated into the car, and obviously is a good place to put a roof box if you need more storage in true overlanding fashion. Now unfortunately we don't have any rear LED indicators. We have just some halogen indicators, which just feels a little bit basic for a $50,000 SUV. Now we've also got a rear wiper here, which seems necessary thanks to all this dust collecting here at the back. We have some badges which say Subaru all-wheel drive on one side, and it will say Crosstrek on the other side with E-Boxer down below to let everyone know that this is the hybrid, and I like that far more as a badge than it just saying simply hybrid, so that looks quite nice. And you've also got this rear diffuser here made of plastic, and you've also got the exhaust tucked way up underneath. So it's really nice to see that Subaru have made a conscious effort to make sure this thing is more confidence inspiring to take on off-road than say a small SUV that might have some awkward hanging elements down below underneath that you might not see, which might snag on some dips and also maybe some awkward rocks. So it's nice to see that this little Crosstrek is properly prepped and ready to go as a small little overlanding vehicle. So in the back of the Crosstrek, you're getting under 300 liters just here in the back with all the seats up. If you fold the seats down in a 60-40 split, you'll get over 1,200 liters, but it's still a lot less than its competitors. So unless you want to prioritize off-road usage, which is what this car is doing, and that's why it has a smaller sort of wheelbase, and also the fact that it is sort of prioritizing space for the all-wheel drive system and also the hybrid battery back here, you are getting a pretty limited boot. So it's not going to be massive, but for two people and maybe the occasional sort of road trip, it's actually not too bad and fairly usable. Plenty of people use this as a daily driver. Now what's annoying is that here in the back, I actually did like the little attention detail of including some cup holders here in the back, because you might sit here in the back after sort of driving off-road and enjoy the view and have a cup holder on either side. But the hybrid lacks that and also lacks a spare tire. Underneath here, we only have a little bit of storage for a tiny, I don't know, like water bottle or something. And then you've also got some goo here to use as a flat tire sealant just to get you to your next location, which is just a bit frustrating since the petrol version of this, the pure petrol, not the hybrid one, comes with a spare tire. So yes, it's a usable boot, but it's not going to be the biggest boot you can get for the money. Now as a 5'11" adult sitting in the back, I have an okay amount of feet room. My head feels pretty close to the ceiling in the back, and I do get a center armrest, which is pretty useful for a small SUV like this. We get a USB Type-C port in the back and a Type-A port in the rear as well. Now I do like these leather material seats in the back. They're quite nice, and you do have some easy access to your ISOFIX points. Now it's funny is on the left side, you do have some ventilation for the hybrid system, which is kind of interesting just here in the second row. And we don't have any air vents right here in the middle or even on the side pillars here, which is just a little bit frustrating. Now, what's also weird is that Subaru only includes a map pocket for the passenger side of the rear seat, not here on the driver's side of the rear seat. We have okay storage here in the doors, but it's super limited. You're definitely not going to get a big water bottle in there, so you have to prioritize this center armrest here. Now, thanks to that giant drivetrain, because it has a mechanical all-wheel drive system, you are getting a giant transmission tunnel here for the size of this car, which means if you sit in the middle seat, you will be sharing the feet room with either side of the rear seats. So yeah, it's a little bit crammed if you want to carry 3 adults in the back. I really like the interior of the new Crosstrek. We have a giant front windshield. These side windows let plenty of light, and also a nice little sunroof here, which you can open, close, and also just close altogether with a sunshade. Now, I don't mind these sun visors here. They have a mirror in them, but they just don't extend enough to block out the sun when it's here on the side, so your face still feels like it's getting burnt. You do have an auto-dimming rear vision mirror here, which I like quite a lot, and the materials in here are just okay, and I don't mind the soft materials you get here on the doors, but something like a Volkswagen will feel a little bit better built than this. We get stitching around the steering wheel, which you don't get on the base model. We get these nicer leather type material seats, which are heated, but they're not too hot. They get nice and warm, but they don't get super hot if that's what you're looking for, but they are very, very comfortable. We get Subaru floor mats, which also have more stitching in them. We get this material around the dashboard, which is a bit softer than hard plastic, but it's still a plastic type material, and it's a nice contrast material across the dashboard. We also get this carbon fiber looking plastic as well, and then down here we also get a glove box, which has a massive owner's manual in it, which I think you can just leave at home if you don't need it when you're daily driving. Now you also do get a giant screen here, which is 11 inches, and it's a huge screen. It's very useful, and I really like it quite a lot. It just makes this interior feel far more modern. Even though the software is just a bit rudimentary, it does the job just fine. Now you've also got quick controls for things like your X mode, which is your off-road modes for this all-wheel drive system. You have permanent buttons down below for your climate controls, and like a home button, and quick controls to profiles, and also going into your car settings. You also do have physical controls on either side for your temperature, your defrosters, and also your tuner and volume knob as well. And you've also got a physical button here for your hazard lights and your trip reset. Down below that, you do have a little light, which is quite nice at night, and it also lights up the auxiliary port and also the USB Type-C port and the USB Type-A port, which just sort of hover there, which is nicely positioned. You've also got yourself a wireless charging pad as well. I think we can get rid of this gloss black plastic here in the center console, because this is meant to be like an off-road focused car, and something like this just gets scratched so easy if you are introducing any dirt or sand into this car, where the base model doesn't get that, which is why I kind of prefer the sort of shifter material around that car than I do on this car. We have a decently sized center cubby here, which is good for holding bottles like this. And we have some little storage here for some cup holders, and just a small little storage bin for things like maybe keys. Now this steering wheel does feel quite nice in the hand. It does have some shifted paddles here, because yes, this does use simulated shifts, even though this is a CVT transmission. We get some metal pedals down here, which are nice to use, and I also do like looking at them as well. Instrument cluster is 2 analog dials, and it's got a tiny little color screen in the middle. So it's fine, but if you are looking for a car that feels a bit more high tech, this just feels a little bit more old school with its gauge cluster. Now you don't get a heads up display, but you get these little lights which will flash up when you're driving to let you know if you're in your lane, if you're drifting off your lane, and if the radar system's on an alert and all that sort of stuff. So it's used to sort of alert you for all the safety systems in the car when they're enabled. And also the Harman Kardon speaker system upgrade in this car would be worth jumping from the standard hybrid version of this car to the S model, which gives you these nicer speaker systems. Now, I have to find out if this car is worth paying a premium over the normal petrol model. Now, I drove the normal petrol model in its base model version, and I love that thing, but I think that the hybrid version might struggle to justify its price tag for one reason. So the standard Crosstrek gets a 2-litre flat-4 petrol motor, but this one gets an extra motor, which is an electric motor, producing 12.3 kilowatts and 66 newton meters, which means it's gonna add on to the 110 kilowatts and 196 newton meters that the petrol motor already produces. And so does it produce a much faster Crosstrek? Absolutely not. This thing is still not fast as it's famously known for, and it would really benefit from a turbo motor. I just think this would really be an awesome little off-roader if it could get a turbo option. But instead, Subaru offers the hybrid as the slightly more powerful engine option here. Normal hybrids usually are a bit more liberal with the electric motor and battery, but here, this operates just like the mild hybrid systems I've been driving in some other cars, which means that yes, it's called a hybrid, but it's more of a mild hybrid because it's sort of using the petrol motor a bit more, and only when you're really coasting and taking off will the engine shut down, and at very low speeds, the engine will turn off completely to go into EV mode, but yeah, it's nothing too frequent. So if you think this is something like a Toyota hybrid, you're going to be thinking wrong. It's not a very EV-focused hybrid drivetrain. Instead, yes, it is prioritizing that petrol motor. Now, in terms of driving off-road here, this is a very comfortable off-roader. Now these tires are pumped up just a little bit too much for this sort of driving, so it does make it feel a little bit more stiff, but the ride on the road is fantastic. I really love riding around in the Crosstrek. It's so easy to cruise across uneven bits of road, speed bumps, all that sort of stuff. It's a very comfortable car day to day, and it translates here to off-road as well. It's still a little bit jittery, but it's not too bad, and it still feels very, very relaxed on this dirt section of road, as well as being out on the pavement. Now, the biggest flaw for this motor, I feel like, is the fuel consumption. So in my tests that I was doing with the petrol version of this car, I was getting around 9 to 10 liters per 100 Ks. Now here in the hybrid version, I'm getting very similar fuel consumption figures, which isn't great. It does dip down a lot more on the highway, where the petrol version will be sipping a bit more out on the highway, but yeah, it's just not a great way to save fuel. It's a bit unfortunate because you want to buy this and you want to see maybe a significant drop in your fuel consumption compared to the normal petrol version. And maybe if you're stepping out of the previous generation petrol version, you want to jump into a hybrid to save a bit of fuel. Unfortunately, it's just not so great at doing that. So it will save you a tiny bit, but maybe not enough to justify that massive price increase. Now the sound isolation is decent from the outside world. There is a bit of road noise and a little bit of wind noise when you're driving out on the highway, but it's actually not too bad. This thing's super easy to park. It's very comfortable in terms of the driving position, and sitting up front is really comfortable just to cruise around in. I absolutely adore daily driving this thing, so that's why part of the reason is why I like this thing, because it's just so comfortable as a daily driver before you even step out onto the dirt. Now when you're out on the dirt, it does really cool things with X mode. So if you jump into dirt mode, snow mode, it'll automatically put on hill descent control, which is pretty useful, but yeah, it might not be entirely necessary for all types of driving, but at least it gives you a bit more control when going down slippery surfaces at a steep angle. Now what's good is the 360-degree camera in here, which allows you to see a bit more around this tiny little off-roader, which is always good just to avoid any sort of awkward mishaps or hitting anything too big if you're just off-roading by yourself or don't want to step out of the car. Now other things as well to note is that the CVT transmission is, yeah, a normal CVT transmission. It's very you know, it doesn't really do anything too spectacular as a CVT transmission. I thought Honda's CVT was more impressive, but Subaru ones just work fine for what they need to do. It does have a simulated gearbox here, which allows you to go into manual mode and hold gears in certain ratios, but it's nothing too dramatic, and only really use that when you really want to squeeze as much power out of this thing as possible. Now steering, yes, is a bit vague, but to be honest, that's sort of what you want in this little off-roader, because you don't want it to be too heavy as you're sort of doing just long trips like this on uneven sections of road. You don't need too much feedback for this sort of stuff. And now there is a individual mode and an S mode here, which allows you to sort of tell the car to rev the engine a bit higher when you're in S mode. Doesn't really do all too much, so I really just keep it in individual mode 90% of the time. Now the brakes work pretty well, but what I really do like is that eyesight camera system, which is really quite active, and especially if you're pulling up to a car or you start to accelerate and the car in front of you is not accelerating, it does read that and it will warn you, which is just something good for when you're driving in bumper to bumper traffic. Again, reinforcing this is a very good daily driver, especially if you're driving in traffic most days. Now, what's cool about this hybrid system is that as we're going down this steep descent here, it is activating itself into EV mode most of the time. So it sort of feels like a little bit like a tiny little electric off-roader at times. But then yes, the petrol motor will kick in when the car deems necessary. So you can't actively toggle between EV mode and petrol mode. Now this is a competent little off-roader, and it's something that's a really good way to probably start your little SUV career if you want to jump into a small little off-roader and you're looking for something that's within a decent budget. I don't think that you need to buy the hybrid unless you really, really want it for the occasional EV driving and the small fuel savings. I just don't think it's entirely necessary. I think the petrol model's just fine, but unfortunately, yes, that is a bit of a thirsty motor still. What I do like is this all-wheel drive system. Because it's a mechanical all-wheel drive system, you do get a nice amount of grip, especially when you start to lose traction. The car is quickly able to sort of get more grip and then pull you along, which is really quite cool, and just something that you probably won't get on a car that doesn't have a mechanical all-wheel drive system and instead uses a hybrid powertrain to drive the rear wheels. And what I like is the size of this thing as well. It just makes going over tight sections of road, like going over this little bridge here, a lot easier than say anything that's a bit chunkier. And so yeah, I really do like the fact this is like the perfect camping companion if you don't want to buy like a ute or anything like that, and you don't want to buy something that feels a bit too basic. It's got a nice amount of amenities in here that feels like you're just taking a lifted Impreza, which is pretty much what the Crosstrek is off-road, which is always a bit of fun. And I found the ground clearance to be really impressive because it's a lower down little off-roader, but it doesn't have any trouble sort of clearing any deeper ruts. Now, you will have to be a little bit careful, but nothing too overly cautious. I just sort of take it a bit slow, and then getting used to that short front overhang's quite easy to get a hold of. And then also, I love at the back, you have a really tucked in rear design, so it's easy to get a nice departure angle, so I'm never stressing about the departure at all, compared to maybe something that's like a wagon shape or something a bit lower that might be more of a hatchback shape. So overall, I am a huge fan of the Crosstrek, and it's just because it's so much fun to take on a dirt road and you're never sweating it, which is always a major plus point. Now this Subaru Crosstrek is the most expensive Subaru Crosstrek you can buy, but I don't think this is the best one you can get for your money. I actually think the base model offers the best value out of the entire range, and here's Cameron to tell you why that model is his favorite. Thanks for that, Cameron. Well, here it is. This is my pick of the range. It's the base model Subaru Crosstrek, and this thing is very fascinating to me because they throw a lot at you for sub $40,000. So for $39,000 drive away, you are getting that vertical touchscreen. You're also getting pretty nice looking cloth seats. You're getting all-wheel drive. You're getting roof rails. You're getting all the same practicality, like you are getting that boot space. You're getting those second row seat space as well as you would in the hybrid. So really, this is the car I would just go out and buy, because then in the aftermarket, you can put some chunkier tires on it, lift it a tiny bit, and you got yourself a nice little overlanding vehicle. And you still get all the safety features here as well, but yes, a tiny bit more power would be nice. That's the only complaint I'd have for this base model, but for the type of driving you do day to day, it's really not that bad, and to be honest, actually quite an enjoyable vehicle to run around in. And that's why I think it's the pick of the range out of all the Subaru Crosstreks you can buy. But of course, if off-roading and modding isn't your thing and you want a few more luxury features, well, Subaru has you covered there. Now back to you, Cameron. Now, if you actually want to go to the snow, go on dirt, go on any light sand, anything like that, you should definitely check out the Crosstrek. Otherwise, if you don't need to do any off-roading, it's probably not entirely necessary to buy, but I still love this SUV for the fact that it is a little off-road SUV. It's not pretending to be an SUV, and it has proper upgrades like a mechanical all-wheel drive system. It has protection for the engine underneath, has a proper amount of ground clearance as well, and it also has things like headlight washers, triple sprayers for your windshield to make sure you get all the debris off your windshield windshield because they expect for there to be a bit more dirt and dust and all that to land on your windshield, hence why they give you 3 sprayers. You also get things like these roof rails as well, and the interior is just a comfortable place to be, and it feels like a rugged little tiny SUV, and I really love what Subaru have done with this current generation Crosstrek. Now, SUVs have lost their ways. You can buy supercar SUVs, you can buy tiny little hatchbacks that just have me lifted off the ground, where this actually is a proper tiny little off-roader, and that's why I really love it, and that's why I'd say you absolutely have to check it out if you intend to take this thing anywhere away from the city. It is a great little road tripper as well, and a very comfortable car to live with. But I will say the one downside for this thing, and even for the hybrid, is that it is a little bit thirsty. So unfortunately, it might be a little bit unfriendly to the fuel budget if you're used to something that might be a traditional hybrid, that might be a bit more conservative on fuel, or you're even used to driving something like a diesel. Now make sure you're following product review cars on TikTok and Instagram for even more car content. And if you want to see more car reviews here on this YouTube channel, you have to hit that subscribe button because it lets me know that you want to see more reviews just like this. And if you want a car that on this channel for us to review, make sure you let me know in the comments down below what I should review next. Thanks for watching. My name's Cameron. I'll see you in the next one.